Yo, what's up? This is Troy from Modern Valor Dating, and right now I'm going to go through Kino, or otherwise known as Kino escalation. And basically, what Kino is a fancy term for breaking the touch barrier and getting touchy with a girl in an actually calibrated, romantic way. My first tip on getting to a point where you're, holding hands with a girl and you're moving things forward and you're not afraid to actually, touch each other. My first tip for that is to baby step it. You don't want to be that guy in the club that just walks up to a girl, gets in her face, and just starts, chasing as she's like backing off. You don't want to do that. You can probably think of a time when you've seen somebody in the club do this. It's a big mistake. Either guys, they don't do anything at all because they're afraid to break the touch barrier. They don't know how to do it. Or when they actually do have the courage to do it, they're not calibrated. They're going in too strong. It doesn't happen in like a calibrated way. So how do you do this in a calibrated way? Well, the important thing is to baby step it. Take it one step at a time. So the first step might be just a light touch on the arm, or even like standing close to her in, proximity to her, or, holding her hands. Sometimes I like to hold my hands out so that she holds onto my hands. It's very easy to do in the bar. And just think about it. Like the next time you're in a bar, or don't think about it, actually do this. The next time you're in a bar, try this opener. They used to call it the hand of God opener. It's where you walk up to a girl and you just hold your hand out like this. And when you hold your hand out like that, people just want to grab it, especially if you're sure of yourself. That's the key, is when you're doing Kino escalation or when you're breaking the touch barrier with a girl, it's important to be very, very sure of yourself so that she trusts you. So you have to trust yourself. You have to completely commit to it. None of this like half-ass shit where you're just like barely reaching out and you're like, do you want to grab my hand? You have to think in your head, I'm holding my hand out, I'm expecting you to grab my hand. And she's more likely to do it because you have that clean energy of, I'm sure of myself, and she feels sure that you're, trustworthy enough to hold on to her hand. It's kind of like a man who's taking care of himself can also take care of other people. It's on a small scale, that's what this is like, I'm sure of myself, so you can be sure of me too. So it's important to have that attitude when you're kind of escalating things physically. So like I said, baby step it. So at first, you might hold hands, you might touch her on the arm, and then you might back off. Another idea to keep in mind is 2 steps forward, 1 step back. So for every time that you kind of like go forward, you kind of want to back off just a little bit and then let the interaction continue. Maybe 5-10 more minutes later, you try something else. Maybe, I don't know, if you're me, you might ask her how good of an Eskimo kisser she is. And then if you don't know what an Eskimo kiss is, it's where you rub noses with each other. That just kind of gives you a good idea of how comfortable she is being face to face with you. Other things that you can do, especially if you're in the bar, is get really close with her, dance with her, hold out your hands, take her hands, put her hands around you, get really close with each other. But really, over time, as long as you are breaking the touch barrier in some way, like lightly touching her arm, getting her to hold your hand, as long as you're doing that, you should be fine. One thing that a lot of guys forget about, this has to do with empathy. So right now we're talking about, having empathy for the girl that you're talking to. If you are holding a girl's hand, or if you're stepping in close to her, if you're touching her on the arm, touching her on the shoulder, you need to pay attention to how she is reacting to you. There's generally 3 ways that a girl can react to these things. She either is really into it, she steps in, she makes good eye contact with you, she starts asking you questions, maybe she starts giggling, playing with her hair, laughing, she loves it, she starts touching you back, she's really into it, or she's kind of neutral about it, so she doesn't move. You touch her on the shoulder, she just doesn't move. Or the other thing is that she backs off. Or I guess there's a 4th thing where she, tells you to F off, and then you have, in that case, the set's probably blown. But assuming that she's just backing off, you back off. Like physically, just take a step back, continue the conversation. Obviously, if you really overstep your bounds, apologize. If she reacts in a neutral way, so she just doesn't react at all, then that's not really a good sign or a bad sign. It's just a sign that she needs a little bit more time before she's ready to get, touchy-feely with you. Now, if you do touch her shoulder, or you touch her arm, or you're holding hands and she, grabs onto your hands and like squeezes your hands tight, or steps into you, starts making eye contact, you get like the kind of anime eyes type of thing. That's kind of what you call a green light. That's not a green light to just jump on her and like make out with her, but it's a green light telling you that the interaction's going well. Continue steadily moving things forward while paying attention to how she's feeling. When you're at the bar, the energy is typically really, really high, right? You walk into a bar, everybody's talking to each other. There's a lot of things going on. There's a lot of energy in that kind of environment. So when you're in the bar environment, you can typically escalate the situation very quickly. You might even make out with a girl within 5 minutes of meeting her. That's not impossible. I wouldn't say that you should strive to do that. I mean, it might be a cool experience to do once in your life. However, you don't need to do that, but it just goes to show that the bar kind of sets that tone of like, oh, it's socially acceptable for a man to talk to a woman. It's socially acceptable to be flirting with each other. It's socially acceptable in that environment to, for a man and a woman to just start escalating things with each other. But again, you don't want to be that guy that's too forward, so you want to calibrate it. You want to always pay attention to how she's feeling and adjust your behavior accordingly. Back off if you need to, or, stay in if she's giving you signals that she's interested. Now, another example that I want to bring up is a time when you might not want to escalate things too much, maybe during the day. Like, say you see a girl that you like in the grocery store, a girl that you're attracted to. You're just walking along, you see this girl, and you're like, damn, I would really like to go talk to her. So you start walking, maybe she's looking at something on the shelf, and you notice what she's looking at on the shelf. You make a comment about it. You start talking about this thing that she's shopping for or that you're looking for. Maybe you get her opinion on something that you picked out at the store. Anything to start a conversation. Okay, so how do you make it more man to woman? How do you break that touch barrier in that situation? Well, in that situation, the vibe is more relaxed. There's less energy in that environment, in a grocery store or walking around in the daytime with shops. Maybe you're bouncing from shop to shop just shopping. If you're doing that, typically you don't really want to break the touch barrier that much, but you still want to do it. A little goes a long way in that situation. If you walk up to a girl on the street, it's highly unlikely that you're just going to start making out with her in 5 minutes. Highly unlikely. Normally what you do in that situation, if it doesn't turn into a date on the spot, normally it's pretty normal to get her number and then pick a later date in order to meet up. So how do you break the touch barrier in this situation? Like I said, a little goes a long way. So you might just touch her on the arm, or you might hold your hand out and say, are your hands cold? And then hold her hand for a second. Whatever, any excuse to, touch hands or to touch her arm that you have is fine. That one touch can do a lot. It lets her know, okay, this guy is not afraid to, break the touch barrier. He's not afraid to be a little bit flirtatious. He's not afraid to be a little bit sexual. So I want to talk about an example when, I was on a Tinder date actually, and me and this girl were walking downtown. It was the daytime. It was just a relaxing afternoon. And I remember thinking, man, this is like a really boring interaction. This is very platonic. Not much is happening here. 30 minutes go by. She gets a hot chocolate, and I get, I think, a tea, like a green tea or something at Starbucks. And I was like, man, I've got to do something. I've got to do something to make this interaction more sexual, or at least more flirtatious, whatever you want to call it. And I need to make it man to woman as opposed to just a friendly thing. So I held out my hand just to see if she would grab my hand to see how cold her hands were, because where I live, it's pretty cold and my hands are kind of cold. So we touched hands. And from that point on, I noticed the vibe totally changed. that's what happens when you finally do touch hands and it's comfortable. She knows like you're comfortable holding her hand and she feels like she can trust you. A lot of times the vibe can just shift like that. That can really be useful, is just doing a little bit so that later on, when she's thinking like, oh, we're gonna meet up, she knows that you're actually going to, be a sexual person as opposed to a friendly person. So now I want to talk about just the kind of the classic date example, like this is like textbook, like how a date should go as far as like, physical escalation is. So, okay, say you meet up somewhere. For me, I like to either bounce around downtown, or ideally, I've actually had some pretty good dates just at the bar where we're sitting, on those spinny stools at the bar. I remember this one time, one of the first bar dates that I had, I was like, okay, I know what I need to do. I need to just like spend time with her. And then I don't want to get in the friend zone with her, so I have to do something to like let her know that I'm comfortable with her touch and that she's comfortable with my touch. I have to engage in that. On one of these classic dates, what you want to do is, again, baby step it, just like I said at the beginning. It could start with a little bit of, just hand touching, or even being close to each other. That's another thing that you could keep in mind in the daytime with a little goes a long way, is even getting really close to each other and maintaining eye contact. Even though you're not like, actually physically touching each other, that kind of makes it man to woman. That makes it a more sexually charged interaction, is just that intimate space, when you're getting really close to each other. One of the first things that you might want to do, again, is like a light touch, holding hands, whatever. But about, 40, 50 minutes into the date, give or take, this is not set in stone, you might want to kiss her at some point. And a good rule of thumb is, if a girl is willing to hold your hand, she squeezes your hand and she's willing to like hold onto your hand, she's probably going to be comfortable kissing you. That's why this whole baby stepping it and paying attention to how she's feeling along the way helps you. You should never be afraid to just go for it. If you're a beginner and you don't know whether or not to, hold her hand or kiss her, just go for it. I like an old saying that I heard a while ago, and it's, social errors are okay as long as you're not oblivious to them. So if you do go in too strong, calibrate. What does that mean? If you go in too strong and she backs off, then you just back off and continue the interaction. I can't tell you how many times when I was learning this, like I would go for a kiss with a girl at the bar and she would kind of like back away. And then you don't want to be the guy who just chases it. You're just chasing the kiss. Like you're you're chasing after her if she's backing away. Don't do that. Just if she starts backing away, then you back away. You'd be surprised by how girls appreciate this when you do this. When you make it not a big deal. It's not a big deal to kiss a girl. Nothing's a big deal. Holding hands with a girl is not a big deal. Sex is not a big deal. It's just sex. It's just kissing. This is normal human stuff. So never make a big deal out of it. Just go for it. And then if she's not into it, cool. Just back off. Maybe try again later. And there you go. That's how you do Kino escalation.